here, and I put it in his face and it explodes, and he dies, and I just like take all the shit from his body. That's kind of funny. So yeah, this is a list of just off the top of my head games that made me laugh. It's about a couple dozen. It's not a whole lot, but it's something. I mean, that's a pretty decent looking list.
Half of it is LucasArts.
Yeah, exactly. That's a pretty good sign.
Where's Borderlands 2?
I don't laugh at my own game. I'm not an asshole. I take that back. I'm probably an asshole, but I don't laugh at my own. But that said, how many games make you cry? If we're saying that comedy is super, super hard, that implies that all the other genres are easier. How many games make you cry? For me, it's just these 3 games. In my 25 years on this planet, only these 3 games have ever made me cry.
No Last of Us?
Sorry?
No Last of Us?
No, I didn't cry. I liked Last of Us, I just didn't cry. Not fucking close. You know, I just cried when the dog died because I was mad. Spoilers. But even if we do admit that comedy in games is easier than tragedy, even if you do sort of accept that premise I just put forward, there's still so much uncharted territory in comedy. There's so much we can be doing that nobody's even really explored yet. Like, who knew that you could make a comedy game out of really weird and difficult to handle physics until Plop and Surgeon Simulator came out? Like, that was just unthinkable. Like you're saying that a lot of games on my list were LucasArts games. I think before games like Plop and Surgeon Simulator and Portal came out, that was certainly where my head was at in terms of like, oh, a funny game is a game where somebody just says a joke, and you do a thing and then they say another joke. Like, Plop and Surgeon Simulator have 0 dialogue, and they're the funniest goddamn games ever. Just because if you try to watch somebody just pick up a phone in Surgeon Simulator and then they hit the thing across the desk, as if like they're just some drunken person who's like, wah, you know, like some sort of like Frankenstein monster who doesn't understand how to work their limbs. That's really funny. Another good example of a gameplay-driven, with a lot of gameplay-driven humor is something like Magica. Have you played Magica? Yeah. Like that game, the funniness comes from like, oops, I killed you, ha ha ha, that's part of the texture of the game, rather than this thing that like punishes you, makes you feel bad. It's just like, oh my god, I like made a healing rain coming down on you, but then I accidentally like did this electricity and it fried all the simultaneously. That's inherently part of the humor and part of the experience playing that game. Before maybe the last 5 years or so, my understanding of comedy personally was just relegated to dialogue. As of recently, I'm seeing comedy come way more through gameplay, and we try to do some of that with Borderlands 2, which I can talk about during the Q&A if you really want to hear about that. But these games, to me, are the first step in exploring interactive humor. So if Jason Rohrer's Passage was the first high-profile game that tried to explore questions of life and death and the meaning of life and all these and aging, all these really sort of heady topics, if that was the first sort of attempt to do that purely through game mechanics, then I kind of honestly feel like these games are the passage of interactive slapstick. And I think that's really, really cool. We've had decades of comedy coming solely through adventure game puzzles or dialogue, so what's next? What's the future of interactive comedy? I honestly don't know, but I'm excited to find out. I hope you guys are going to be part of that process of exploration and discovery. So if there's one point to my inane rambling, it is this. Please make more funny games. Make more comedies, design unusual gameplay that makes the player laugh, fill your absurdly violent shit with jokes and gags. Please make more funny games. That is my one point to this talk. There's a second point to this talk, which is that Katarina knows me. That's all I got. So I'm going to give out some stuff. I think we can do it like associated with questions, like you ask a question, I answer it, and then I give you a thing. Just to try to keep it going. Do you want to say something? No. Okay, cool. Oh, thanks. So who's question? Somebody back there. Yeah, you with the glasses.
Could you explain a little how like the writing process works, like how you develop the story and then
Sure.
get implemented into the gameplay?
Sure. So the basic is a back and forth, where it's me working with the designers and a lot of times the artists to basically implement something they think is really cool from a design side but has no narrative context to it, or me having a really neat idea that doesn't actually have any gameplay associated with it. So like, for example, the former, I came up with the idea for me to shoot this guy in the face quest where he just goes, shoot me in the face, and then you shoot him. It's like a 2-second quest. And so I just went and talked to Ryan Keaton, who is one of our designers, a level designer and a mission designer. I was just like, can you please do this? And he went, okay, and we just did it. Which actually ended up being one of the most fucking hellishly complicated quests in the entire game, weirdly, even though it's only one thing. Example, the inverse would be like Ben Gettleman, who's another designer, came to me one day and was like, hey, I want to do a Top Gun quest. I was like, okay. He's like, would you be okay with writing just a quest that was basically just a bunch of Top Gun references? I was like, that's what I was born to do. I think. A lot of the times in terms of, that's mainly with regards to side mission stuff, it's kind of that cross-pollination. In terms of the main plot, a lot of it came from myself and the creative director of the game, Paul Hellquist. He's the guy I was talking about earlier, who was lead designer of Bioshock that I worked with all the time. We sort of came up with the broad strokes of the narrative, came up with this very sort of, we're big fans of like System Shock 2, so we're like, okay, let's make a game that's like about, go find Shodan and kill him, like something like that. So we came up with Handsome Jack, and I tried to find a bunch of excuses to sort of layer in things that the level designers had already known they wanted to do. They knew they wanted Sanctuary Bandits to take off. The designers knew they wanted the original 4 Vault Hunters to come back as NPCs. They knew they wanted certain levels, like they want this ice level and this fiery level and all this shit. So we tried to sort of make them all sort of coexist with one another. It's basically just a constant back and forth, give and take. There's no like, this is the story, now do it, my minions. There's none of that. It's certainly not like somebody whipping me and being like, more words, monkey, or...
Yeah. This is going to be, a slightly more detailed question, but in Borderlands 2, I felt like the...
Shitting on that guy's question. It's going to be like a stupid question like that idiot asked.
So in Borderlands 2,
I think it's actually with the Arid Nexus when you had to crash into the pipe with a car.
Yeah. Yeah, there's like, you're going to get sort of a random, we've got like pens and lanyards and shirts and lights, and then there's a big one at the end that probably should give you cheat yourself out as an email.
I felt like the writing there, it's like the Arid Nexus became like an Arid Nexus of comedy. There wasn't much like funny happening there, and the whole. I mean, I know you're not a level designer, but the level itself also felt like it was just dry.
The reason it's dry is because it's literally supposed to be like the Arid background from the first game. Like you played the first game, you remember that your 2 memories are probably like, oh, that ending, and like brown, like that game. Level design, that's the way it was. The reason there was very little comedy in that area is because we had just basically, spoilers, but we just basically killed off Roland, kidnapped Lilith, and killed off Angel, and had all this really heavy shit happen. And we knew this was a possibility just because the way the game is structured, that you could go off and find a really wacky joke on your own after that happened. But I didn't want to exacerbate that problem, because you don't want like all this really heavy shit happening, and then somebody makes a fart joke, and then granted, people did that anyway, because you would just go off and do a side quest you hadn't done before and not happen to have fart jokes in it or whatever. But I wanted the Arid Nexus to at least be a brief lull in like the like hit you in the face every 2 seconds comedy. That said, there's still some gags that I'm pretty proud of, like Handsome Jack pretending to be Roland and talking about going out for milkshake. But yeah, that's fine.
So this isn't really going to relate to comedy as much, but more the future of a different genre of games that I'm really interested in. Because we've seen really good games like Amnesia come out, we've seen Slender come out, and recently Outlast. So in your opinion, as a designer, what do you think the future of horror games is going to be?
I really, really hope that we're going to see even more games. I think Amnesia was the first sort of foray into this. I really hope we see more horror games that aren't horror/other genre games. Like Fear, I love Fear. I think it's a really fun game. It is not scary at all, because there's something inherently scary about disempowerment, and there's something inherently super not scary about literally being able to go into slow motion and jump in kung fu kick a guy, and then take out 2 pistols and kill everyone in the room. Like, after I do that, and a little girl with like the ring hair comes up and goes, ah, like that's not fucking scary. Like, I just go, bam, and that would be it. I think it's what you see with Amnesia. Like for me, the most brilliant mechanic in Amnesia was the sanity meter, and the fact that when you looked at an enemy, you got more insane, and you had to look away from enemies. Because I feel like they did some sort of psychological evaluation or psychological research to find out that like not being able to see something that you know is getting closer is really fucking scary, and that sensation of getting to get louder and louder, and hearing it breathing, and just going, oh my god, please just pass by me, don't fucking kill me, please. That was like brilliant, and I think you're seeing a lot more of that with like even small things like I'm playing a game called Eldritch right now. It's not out yet. I'm just bragging because I just haven't heard it built. But it's made by a guy called David Pitt who worked on Bioshock 2 came we're in. And it's got these enemies that are basically, if you guys have seen Doctor Who, the Weeping Angels from Doctor Who, they basically act like that, where they're these like statues of lizards, and if you get close enough, they activate. and then if you turn around, you're just, and then you all of a sudden half of your health is gone, and you turn around, they're like, ah, like right next to you, and it's like the scariest thing in that entire game. And that game's like got like cute Minecraft graphics, and it's not actually, the thing doesn't look scary, it's the gameplay and the design itself that makes it scary. So that's my really weird and overly long way of saying I think we're going to see more games that actually try to be scary through design rather than like purely narrative or visual reasons.
So did you have a hand in like writing the comedy into the guns and the way that worked as well?
Yeah.
So like the gun that explodes when you throw it?
No, not that. That was Matt Armstrong and Rob Rodriguez, who were two designers. Matt Armstrong was creative director of the first game, and he designed all the guns and most of the stuff for the second game. Rob Rodriguez still for days, he did a bunch of gun stuff. They just thought one day, like, that would be funny. Like, what if you did that? And then they did more research into it, and then found out that it was actually really interesting gameplay-wise. Because what happens if you throw a clip that's got all its ammo? You just lost all that ammo, but if you hit it, there's a lot of ammo. The guns that I kind of was a part of were like the Bane, the gun that yells at you. Yeah, I can understand why.
The annoying sounding one?
Yeah, the annoying sounding one, the one that chastises you every time you kill somebody by saying like, oh, they had a family. That was just a straight up. If you guys read the comic SGDA, the webcomic SGDA, like there's a comic that's just called. It's basically saying like he made a mod to a game where every time you kill somebody it says the backstory, and the number of that comic is 873, so I named that class Hyperion contract 873, which is good. Not really an homage, but like I'm stealing this, but I know that I'm stealing it.
So when you started your talk, you talked about authored meaning versus like dynamic meaning, or authored experience and dynamic experience, and how they tend to conflict in games. And so your approach to try and solve that seemed like it was essentially kind of subverting player expectations, and I'm curious, I guess, because to a certain extent it almost feels like a one-off. It feels like while you subvert these expectations, you introduce comedy, but you remove contextual depth. Like you have no justification for your action because it's funny. So my question is, how would you try and preserve depth and meaning, quote unquote, in a game while still introducing comedy?
I think it comes down to how the comedy works. Like I think because of reasons is exactly what you're saying, where I'm basically sacrificing depth and narrative complexity for a joke, or using it as a band-aid for actual substance. I think other times there's a lot of comedy in the game that does not necessarily remove depth. It can be additive or at least parallel to depth. Like, for example, the thing I was talking about earlier where like we used gameplay, but sort of mechanic we've gotten used to for this joke about Handsome Jack, where it's generally given, it's a given that when the echo, we call them echo, but the echo portrait of a character shows up on your right-hand corner of the screen. You see their picture and that person talks to you. The player has sort of gotten used to that basic pattern, like it's a very simple pattern. And then near the end of the game, we have Roland's echo portrait come up after he's dead, and Handsome Jack's voice comes out and he makes fun of you pretending to be Roland. Like, that to me actually adds a little bit of depth because it's Jack twisting the knife and talking, and he's basically going on to talk about how much he wants to kill you and how much of a dick you are, and how he so easily killed this big bad Vault Hunter Roland, and you're going to be next. Like, I think there's a way to sort of meld jokes and that stuff in a way that doesn't undercut it. I think some of the examples I used were more of the like, ah, fuck you, like kind of examples. But I would like to believe that a lot of comedy in Borderlands 2 doesn't take away from the not necessarily the severity of the experience, because it's not this like, again, it's not sad violins and children dying and shit, but it hopefully gives you, still provides you the context you need to know, like, why do I need to kill Handsome Jack? Oh, because he did all this really fucked up shit. Why do I need to care about this person? Oh, because they're still a person, they're not just a caricature of a person, like, hopefully. Way in the back. Yes?
I'm just curious, what was the idea behind Butt Stallion?
Butt Stallion is one of my favorite guys in the game because it almost didn't happen. Like, the original idea was the new use stations are owned by Hyperion, and Jack is the president of Hyperion, and he wants to kill you, so we had this really weird plot thing where, like, Handsome Jack wants to kill you. Okay, succeeded. Like, why didn't he doesn't say anything? So we had originally all this dialogue where Handsome Jack had a chance to talk to you when you died, and he would laugh about, like, the idea I had was that there was, like, going to be 4 or 5 different echo lines that would play every time you died, and he'd be like, hey, I'm getting a lot of money from all this dying you're doing. Hey, it's great. And eventually he would build up to the fact that, like, you died so many times I bought his money, he's not even died, it's even bus sign. All that got cut because we felt like drawing too much attention to you, and that way it was kind of weird. So we just I had that idea for the line I really liked, but I never knew where to put it. But the intro of the game got rejiggered really significantly. It used to be that you were fighting in a coliseum for Handsome Jack, and like he betrays you and like takes away all your stuff, and like he directly like shoots you in the face and kicks you out into the tundra. Like it was a really direct kind of a thing. That got changed into what it is in the main game, which is like you're on a train and the train explodes, and like he made the train explode. And so we realized, oh fuck, like the whole point of our game is go kill this guy, and you don't know why this guy matters until like 4 hours later when you get to Sanctuary, because we cut out that one part where he makes himself known as the villain. So I was just rushing to try and find the things that I liked, that I could have him say something at the beginning of the game that made him like a person, like made you aware that he existed in the story, and hopefully made you laugh and made him interesting. And that was just my favorite joke that I've written for him that was unused at the time. So I was like, fuck it, let's die.